October 16th, 1941, 2:17 a.m. The North Atlantic, 400 miles south of Iceland, the bridge of the SS Grodno. The air is black. Not dark, but a solid, freezing, vertical black. Lookout Thomas Askey, 19 years old, strains his eyes from the starboard wing. His face is numb, his wool balaclava stiff with frozen spray. This is his third run on the Halifax to Liverpool route. He is one of 600 merchant seamen in convoy SC-48. They are the prey. Below his feet, the Grodno's old triple expansion engine thumps a steady, agonizingly slow 8 knots. It is a sound he can feel in his bones. And then, another sound cuts through the wind. Ping. It's distant. The convoy escort, a single Royal Canadian Navy destroyer, HMCS Skeena, hunting. Ping. It's closer now. Askey grips the frozen rail. He is not a soldier. He is a delivery man. His ship is not a warship. It is a floating warehouse. And its cargo hold is filled with 10,000 tons of Canadian wheat, a city's worth of bread. A white light, bright as a magnesium flare, erupts 5 miles off the port bow. A rocket. A U-boat has illuminated the convoy. The Grodno's engine room telegraph clangs. Full ahead. The ship shudders. It's too late. 02:18 a.m. A second flare, this time from the other side. The wolf pack. They are inside the convoy. A concussion, so powerful it feels like a physical punch, rattles Askey's teeth. A column of water and fire climbs into the sky where the SS Silverbell, a tanker, used to be. Then a second explosion. A third. The night becomes a hideous flickering day. You're watching the SS Iona, a freighter just 800 yards ahead. Her cargo is 7,000 tons of frozen Canadian bacon and cheese. A torpedo strikes her amidships. There is a dull, heavy thump, and the ship simply breaks in half. The two ends rise up to the sky, like a V, as if in a final agonizing salute. She is gone in 60 seconds. 7,000 tons of protein, 7,000 tons of hope, vanished into the freezing black water. Askey and the Grodno will, against all odds, survive the night. But SC-48 will be a massacre. 9 ships lost, 200 sailors, and nearly 100,000 tons of vital supplies gone. This is the Battle of the Atlantic, and in late 1941, Britain is losing. The U-boats are waging a war not just on ships, but on calories. In London, Lord Walton, the Minister of Food, knows a truth more terrifying than any German bomb. Britain is starving. You are a housewife in Coventry. It is 1941. You wake up. You have your ration book. This is your allowance, per week, 4 ounces of bacon or ham, about 4 thin slices, 2 ounces of tea, 8 ounces of sugar, 2 ounces of butter, and 1 shell egg. 1, if you are lucky, you might get your meat ration, the value of 1 shilling and 2 pence. Your children are pale. They complain of being cold, but what they really are is hungry. The vegetables from your Dig for Victory garden plot are thin. The winter is coming, and the ships are sinking. Lord Walton and his ministry are in a state of quiet panic. The problem is not just supply, it is math. A single ship, like the SS Iona, carries 7,000 tons of food. But to keep that food fresh, the bacon, the butter, the precious shell eggs, it requires refrigeration. That means specialized ships, reefers, which are rare and high-priority targets. A single egg is 70% water. It is a logistical nightmare. It is delicate, requires careful packing, and takes up enormous space. You are shipping water and air across an ocean infested with submarines. The British government pleads with Canada and the United States to send us food, send us protein. But the demand is impossible. Even if Canada could produce 1 billion eggs, it has no way to ship them. The cargo space is the most valuable commodity on Earth. Every square foot of a ship's hold must be maximized. A crate of eggs is a waste. A crate of bombs, or artillery shells, or aluminum is a necessity. Lord Walton, a former department store executive, understands the problem in terms of physics and economics. We must reduce the bulk, he writes in a memorandum to the cabinet. We must ship the food, not the water. We must find a way to make it last. The call goes out, not to the generals, not to the admirals, but to a group of men in quiet, sterile laboratories in Ottawa. The scientists at Canada's National Research Council. They are chemical engineers, physicists, and biologists. They have been working on metallurgy for destroyers and aerodynamics for bombers. Now, they are given a new, seemingly mundane, and utterly vital task. Weaponize the kitchen. They are asked to do the impossible. They must take an egg, remove its water, remove its bulk, and make it stable enough to survive a 6-week ocean voyage in a non-refrigerated hold. And they must make it edible. The British have tried. Dried egg powder has existed for years, and it is universally hated. It is a grainy yellow-grey powder that, when reconstituted, tastes of sulphur and cardboard. It clumps. It rots quickly in the tin. The challenge isn't making powdered egg. The challenge is making it good. Dr. Charles J. H. Mackenzie, the acting head of the National Research Council, assembles his team. He is an engineer, not a chef. He sees this as a problem of industrial processing. Gentlemen, he might have said, we have been asked to feed Britain. The army marches on its stomach, and right now that stomach is empty. The future of this war may not be decided on the battlefield, but in the spray-drying towers we're about to design. The hunger gap, created by the U-boats, must be closed by science. The protein offensive is about to begin. The war against hunger wasn't fought in a fortress. It was fought in a quiet 4-story brick building in Ottawa, the National Research Council, or NRC. This was the domain of men like Dr. W. H. Cook. Cook was not a general. He was a biologist, a specialist in food preservation. He understood decay. He understood bacteria. And he understood, with a painful clarity, why the old powdered egg was so revolting. You're a scientist on his team. Your first task is to analyze the enemy, the British type old egg powder. You open a tin. The smell hits you first, a sharp, sulfuric, almost metallic odor. The powder itself is a dull, brownish yellow, and it's clumpy. When you add water, it doesn't dissolve. It congeals into a lumpy, grainy paste. When you cook it, the smell of rotten eggs fills the lab. This, Dr. Cook states flatly, is not a food. It is a chemical failure. The team identifies 3 core problems. 1. Oxidation. The fat in the egg yolk is exposed to air, and it turns rancid, creating the cardboard taste. 2. Cooking. The old drying process. Drum drying involves spreading the egg pulp on a massive, hot, rotating steel drum. It is slow. It scrambles the egg protein before it's even dry, making it insoluble. 3. Bacteria. The process isn't hot enough to kill microbes, but it's slow enough to let them breed. The powder isn't just bad, it's dangerous. The team knows the theory for a solution: spray drying. It's a technology borrowed from the powdered milk industry. It is elegant, fast, and violent. The process is simple in concept. You spray a fine mist of liquid egg, atomize it, into the top of a drying tower, a sterile yet stainless steel silo 3 stories high. At the same time, you blast a torrent of superheated dry air into that same chamber. The theory is this: as the microscopic egg droplets fall, the intense heat, over 300 degrees Fahrenheit, causes the water on their surface to evaporate instantly. This evaporation is so rapid, it creates a cooling effect on the droplet itself. The water vanishes, but the delicate egg protein inside never actually gets hot. It doesn't cook. It doesn't burn. By the time the solid particle, a perfect, microscopic sphere of dry yolk and albumin, hits the bottom of the tower, it is dry. The whole process takes less than 30 seconds. This is the theory. The reality is a nightmare. You're in the experimental plant in early 1942. The prototype tower, built with a government grant, is thrumming. The first run is a disaster. The nozzles, designed for thin milk, clog with the viscous egg yolk. The pressure is wrong. The result isn't a fine mist, but a sticky rain that coats the inside of the tower with a thick layer of half-cooked, caramelized egg. The entire run must be stopped. The tower disassembled and the whole thing scraped clean by hand. It takes 2 days. Again, Cook says, his voice tight. They adjust the nozzles. They thin the egg liquid. The second run. The nozzles work. A cloud of fine yellow powder settles in the collection bin. The scientists cheer. They rush a sample to the lab. They add water. It dissolves perfectly. A smooth, golden liquid, indistinguishable from a freshly beaten egg. They pour it into a pan. It scrambles. It looks like scrambled eggs. A technician, the youngest on the team, takes a forkful. He chews. His face twists. "It's better, raw sir," he says slowly, "but yes, it's still wrong. The sulfur taste is gone, but the rancid cardboard taste is still there." The team is despondent. The spray drying works. The physics is correct, but the chemistry is still failing. The powder is still oxidizing. They work for weeks. They try drying at lower temperatures. They try drying at higher temperatures. They try every combination of airflow and pressure. Nothing. The rancid taste remains. The breakthrough comes not from a machine, but from a simple, elegant realization. Perhaps the problem isn't the drying. Perhaps the problem is the egg. Dr. Cook and his team discover that the off flavor isn't just from the fat. A specific sugar in the egg white, glucose, is reacting badly with the protein during the heating. They invent a process to desugar the egg before drying, using a simple enzyme. It helps, but it's not enough. Then, the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. It is discovered by accident. A sample left on a lab bench over the weekend in an unsealed tin tastes infinitely worse than one left in a sealed beaker. The enemy is air. The problem is not during the drying. The problem is after. The perfectly dried, microscopic powder has a massive surface area. The moment it hits the oxygen in the collection bin, the fats begin to oxidize. The solution is brilliant, and it is total. First, the liquid egg is flash pasteurized, heated quickly and cooled to kill bacteria and stabilize the protein before it's dried. Second, it is spray dried in the now perfected tower. Third, and this is the magic, the collection and packing process is re-engineered. The powder is not allowed to touch the air. It falls from the dryer, is funneled directly into tins, and the tin is sealed. But not before a small nozzle blasts the remaining oxygen out of the can, replacing it with an inert blanket of carbon dioxide gas. Gas packing. It is late 1942. A final, coded cable is sent to Lord Walton in London. New product ready for field test. A crate of the new gas-packed tins is shipped on a fast destroyer. In a bunker in London, a skeptical Ministry of Food procurement officer opens the tin. It is an unassuming, fine, light yellow powder. He mixes it with water. He cooks it. He tastes it. He tastes it again. There is no sulfur. There is no cardboard. It is bland. It is a bit flat, but it is unmistakably egg. A cable is sent back to Ottawa. It contains a single word, proceed. The order is given. The Canadian government, in partnership with private industry, begins to build massive, multi-story drying towers in cities from coast to coast. The problem of the egg has been solved by science. A 12-pound tin of Canadian modified dried egg powder now holds the equivalent of 360 shell eggs in a fraction of the space. With no refrigeration, it is a weapon. But Dr. Cook and his team are already looking at the rest of the plate. The egg is solved. But what about the bacon? Bacon is 60% fat and 20% water. It is heavy. It rots. It is a shipping nightmare. The scientific kitchen is open for business, and the next course is on the menu. The problem of bacon was, in many ways, harder than the egg. An egg is a self-contained unit. Bacon is a slab of meat, defined by its high fat content. And fat is the enemy of preservation. It is what turns rancid, what carries the foul taste of decay. You are a quartermaster in 1941. Your cargo hold is full of traditional salt-cured bacon, packed in massive wooden barrels. It is heavy, it is wet, and by the time it reaches Liverpool, a third of it is often spoiled, a green, slimy, inedible mess that has to be thrown into the harbour. It is, like the shell egg, a logistical nightmare. The Canadian scientists at the NRC, now working with the meat packing industry, approach this not as a problem of curing, but as a problem of physics. The enemy, once again, was water and bulk. A side of bacon is 60% fat and 20% water. It is mostly not protein. And it is awkward. It doesn't pack well. It leaves huge air gaps, empty space in a crate. The solution was, like the egg, brutal and ingenious. They did not try to preserve raw bacon. They decided to pre-cook it. The process was perfected at plants like Canada Packers. Massive sides of high-grade Canadian pork, already cured, were brought in. They were cooked thoroughly, rendering out a huge portion of the fat and, crucially, the water. This pre-cooked bacon was then placed into massive hydraulic presses. The presses squeezed the still warm meat with immense pressure, pressing the individual cooked rashers together into a single, dense, solid block of pure protein and fat. This solid block was then expertly trimmed to fit perfectly into a standard 12-ounce tin. No air, no wasted space. The tin was sealed, then retorted, cooked a second time inside the can to ensure total sterilization. The result was a revolution. It was called Canadian Canned Pre-Cooked Bacon. You, a British soldier on the front line in Italy, would recognize it. Your American counterparts had a similar version, but the Canadian innovation was the scale and the quality. You could open the tin with your bayonet. Inside, you would not find a slimy, wet product. You would find a solid block of meat. You could slice off a piece and eat it cold. You could drop a slice into your mess tin, and in 30 seconds, the heat would release the fat, and it would fry, sizzle, and smell like bacon. It was a taste of home. It was a 2,000-calorie morale bomb. And for the admirals, it was a miracle of logistics. A single ship's hold that once carried 1,000 tons of perishable, waterlogged, barrel-packed bacon could now carry 4,000 tons of protein equivalent in these dense, sterile, stackable tins. The product was shelf-stable for years. It didn't need refrigeration. It could be dropped on a beach in Dieppe, parachuted into occupied France, or stored in a damp London warehouse for a year, and it would be perfectly, safely edible. The orders from the British Ministry of Food became a flood. The bacon was solved. But there was one more piece. Man cannot live on bacon and eggs alone. The most basic, most vital, and most difficult food of all. Milk. Milk is 87% water. It is, logistically, the single most insane product to ship across an ocean at war. The spray-drying towers built for the eggs were the answer. The technology, which Canada had now perfected, was turned on milk. The challenge was, again, the fat. Whole milk powder, full of milk fat, would go rancid even faster than the eggs. The solution was twofold. First, for the troops. They made skimmed milk powder. By removing the fat before drying, they created a product that was almost pure, stable protein. It could be reconstituted with water to create a drink, or, more often, it was mixed directly into stews and baked into the army's bread, creating a protein-fortified loaf that kept soldiers marching. Second, for the children and civilians of Britain, they created roller process whole milk powder, a hardier, if less soluble as version that retained the precious calorie-dense fat. It wasn't as good as the spray-dried, but it was stable. Late 1942, a dock in Halifax. You are a stevedore, loading a park freighter. You are not loading crates of delicate eggs. You are not loading barrels of wet, salty bacon. You are not loading sloshing, heavy milk churns. You are loading pallets of 12-pound tins stamped with a small maple leaf, Canadian modified dried egg powder. You are loading crates of 12-ounce tins, Canadian pre-cooked bacon. You are loading 100-pound sacks, Canadian skimmed milk powder. This ship, and the dozens like it, are now carrying a cargo that is almost 100% pure nutrition. The water has been left in Canada. The U-boats are still hunting. The SS Iona and its 7,000 tons of frozen food are at the bottom of the Atlantic. But this new ship, in that same 7,000-ton hold, is carrying the food equivalent of 10 1940-era refrigerated freighters. The hunger gap, the mathematical problem that was starving Britain into submission, had been solved by a handful of scientists in a quiet Ottawa lab. The protein offensive was now in full swing. The impact on the British home front and on the soldiers waiting for D-Day would be immediate and profound. January 11th, 1943, a primary school in Birmingham, England. It is 11 a.m. The air raid siren wailed an hour ago, but the all clear has sounded. You're a 7-year-old child named Alice. You are cold. Your school's windows are crisscrossed with paper tape to prevent shattering. You are also hungry, not starving, not like the children you see in the newsreels from Europe, but a constant gnawing, low-level hunger. But today is Canada Day at the school canteen. A volunteer hands you a steaming cup. It is national dried milk, reconstituted with hot water. It is sweet. It is warm. It fills your stomach in a way that thin barley soup does not. You're also given a small yellow square on a piece of brown bread. Eat up, the volunteer says. It's Canadian egg. You eat it. It doesn't taste like the shell egg you vaguely remember from before. But it is hot, it is protein, and it is yours. This scene, repeated millions of times across Britain, was the true front line of the food war. The Canadian powdered egg, in its 12-pound tins, became the currency of survival for the British civilian. It was not glamorous. In fact, it became the butt of jokes. Soldiers and civilians alike would grumble about the Canadian egg. They would complain about the texture, the blandness, but they ate it. They ate it scrambled. They ate it in omelettes. But mostly, it vanished into the national diet, used by bakers, who were now able to make cakes and bread rise again, and by canteen chefs to bind together potato and vegetable victory pies. It was the invisible protein that held a nation together. The statistics were staggering. By 1944, Canada was shipping the equivalent of 50 million shell eggs. Every month, they shipped over 1.7 million pounds of the life-saving pre-cooked bacon. This infusion of stable, high-quality protein stopped the slide. British health, which had been deteriorating alarmingly in 1941, stabilised. Lord Walton, the food minister, later credited the Canadian food scientists with being as vital to our survival as the Spitfire pilots. This kind of quiet, scientific victory is often overlooked in the history books. If you believe these stories of hidden ingenuity deserve a spotlight, please take a moment to click the subscribe button. It helps us continue to uncover the forgotten fronts of the war. And for the soldier, it was the taste of home. You are a Canadian private, stationed at a damp-dreary, muddy camp in Aldershot, England in 1943. You're training for an invasion. You don't know where, you don't know when. The food is British, boiled potatoes, boiled cabbage, thin stew. Your morale is at rock bottom. Then, one morning, the mess sergeant yells that a priority shipment has arrived. He doesn't serve you the local fare. He cracks open a 12-ounce tin. He slices the dense pink block inside. The sizzle and smell of frying bacon, real bacon, fills the mess hall. He opens a 12-pound tin of yellow powder, and 30 minutes later, you're looking at a plate of bright, fluffy scrambled eggs. It is a Canadian breakfast. It is more than food. It is a message. It is a reminder of the vast, high-quality, rich nation that stands behind you. It is the fuel of morale. This food, the bacon, the eggs, the milk, fed the armies massing in England. It powered the men who would hit the beaches of Normandy. It sustained the pilots on their 8-hour bombing runs. It gave the factory worker in Coventry the calories she needed to build the Spitfire. The war ended. The ships stopped sinking. The fresh food returned. The world, exhausted and grateful, immediately forgot about the innovations. The powdered egg became a symbol of rationing, a bad memory to be joked about and discarded. The massive spray-drying towers were sold for scrap or converted to make ice cream mix. The quiet scientists of the NRC, men like Dr. W. Cook, went back to their labs. They received medals, but they never received the fame of the generals or the pilots. But their victory was, perhaps, more profound. They had faced an enemy, the U-boat, that was sinking the physical lifeline of a nation. The U-boat commander, the ace, was a master of a multi-million-dollar machine of destruction, and he was defeated, in part by a man in a white lab coat who figured out how to gas-pack a tin of egg powder. The Battle of the Atlantic was not just a naval war. It was a war of physics, chemistry, and logistics. The German wolf packs wagered that they could starve Britain into submission. They lost the bet. They had not accounted for the ingenuity of the Canadian scientific kitchen and its unrelenting, unconquerable, and perfectly preserved protein offensive. The war was won with bombs and bullets, but it was fought on calories. What other hidden part of the war effort, from science logistics, or the home front, do you think deserves its own documentary? Share your ideas in the comments below, and thank you for watching.